Little Miss Muffet stepped forward. "What's that got to do with us?" she asked. "Miss Muffet, it has everything to do with you," the old woman replied, "and your children." The crowd gasped and averted their eyes. "Brother Grim, you lost your mind," the beast declared. "None of us have children." "That's what I thought," Granny Rhoda said, "until my granddaughter asked a question that I should have asked myself. Who else worked at Fairyport Landing Elementary? I had nearly forgotten that you, the Frog Prince, and Little Miss Muffet were all teachers there before the three of you won the lottery." Sabrina beamed with pride. Granny may have disapproved of Sabrina's suspicions about the ever-afters, but it was those same suspicions that were helping solve the mystery. "We won the lottery more than 10 years ago," Miss Muffet said, "and I go by Mrs. Arachnid now." "So we worked at the school. What does that have to do with the murder?" the Frog Prince asked. "It's your retirement that interests me. Let me explain. Witnesses say there have been attacks by two so-called monsters on school grounds," Granny said, crossing the room and stopping in front of the Frog Prince and Princess. "And my family and I were victims of a third attack during our investigation. This one involved a half-girl, half-frog creature. Luckily, no one was hurt." The couple lowered their eyes and Granny moved on to Muffet, aka Mrs. Arachnid, and her spider. "Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Mr. Grotner. He was killed by what we suspect was a giant spider." The spider clicked angrily, but his wife was still. Granny moved on to Beauty and the Beast. Charlie, the school janitor, also met an untimely demise by a creature described as a hairy, man-eating beast with yellow eyes, Granny said. "You can't prove those are our children," Beauty cried. "You're right, but there's one thing that we can prove," Sheriff Hamster interjected. "None of you ever won the lottery." Everyone gasped, even Puck. "I call the State Lottery Commission," the sheriff continued. "I have records of every lottery winner in the last 100 years. None of you are on their list." "Where did you get the money?" Granny asked. "Are you suggesting we sold our children?" the beast growled. "I think you know I am," Granny Rhoda answered. "And so am I," Hamster added. He reached into his pocket and took out a pair of handcuffs. "I also think you are going to be arrested unless someone starts talking." "We were nearly broke when we found out I was pregnant," the Frog Princess said. "All of our money was gone. We were worried we'd lose our house." "If you go broke in Fairyport Landing, you stay that way. There's no one to bail you out. You can't move to another town. We would have been beggars in the street." Beauty broke down tears as well. "We were in the same predicament, barely making ends meet on Beast's teacher's salary. It was no way to raise a child. He told us he could help. One night, he brought over a spinning wheel and started spinning gold. By morning, we had enough to last us a dozen lifetimes. We sold it to a precious metals merchant from New York City. We were rich overnight." "Who did this?" said Granny Rhoda. "Rumpelstiltskin!" the Frog Princess cried. The Frog Prince took her hand and begged her to be silent, but the tears in truth were already pouring out of her. "We had to come up with an explanation for the money, so we invented the lottery story," she said. "You sold your children?" Sabrina cried. She had never heard of a more horrible story in her entire life. "How could you?" "He manipulated us," Mrs. Arachnid sobbed. "I know you don't understand, but when we gave him the babies, it was like we weren't in control of ourselves. We were so desperate, so full of despair. It was like he crawled into our brains and rewired them, so we really believed it was the best thing we could do." "No, I don't understand," Sabrina shouted. "You filthy ever-afters are nothing but animals. You would hand your children over to a monster so you could cover yourselves in jewels and furs." Mrs. Arachnid looked down at her sparkling necklace and started to cry. "Sabrina," Granny said, "that's enough. I agree, Daphne said. Take a chill pill. Sabrina ignored them. No wonder Wilhelm trapped you in this town. All of you belong in a cage. Sabrina Groom, you will hold your tongue this instant, Granny Rhoda ordered. You got yelled at, Puck taunted. Puck, that goes for you as well. Sabrina was stunned. The old woman had never raised her voice to her. The girl's face was hot with embarrassment. If we showed you photos of all the children at the school, do you think you could pick out which ones might be yours in their human disguise? The sheriff asked, picking up the Ferryport Landing Elementary School yearbook that was sitting on his desk. I don't think so, Ernest, Beauty said, trying to control her sobbing. We haven't seen them since they were a day old. We didn't even get to name them. Well, we will do the best we can to reunite you with them, Granny Rhoda said. You would do that for us? The beast asked. Of course, Daphne said proudly. We are Grimms and this is what we do. Do you need anything from me? Hampstead said. Granny shook her head and flashed Sabrina an angry look. Actually, can I have a police hand? Daphne asked the sheriff. Hampstead smiled and nodded at the girl. You're so punk rock, she cried. Once the family was outside, Sabrina wasn't sure which was colder, the bitter winter air or Granny's attitude toward her. She also knew that Daphne was going to give her the silent treatment again, but it didn't matter to her anymore. I'm not sorry for what I said, she declared. Oh, we're well aware of that, Granny Rhoda said as they approached the car. Mr. Cairns was waiting on the roof. I heard yelling, he said, crawling down to help the old woman into the front seat. I bet you're going to hear a lot more, Puck said, sounding hopeful. Everything is fine, the old woman said. It's late and I think we all need a good night of rest. Good idea, Daphne said. We can search the tunnels tomorrow. No, I don't think so, Granny said as they got settled into the car. Things have escalated to a point where I don't feel comfortable having the three of you help out. A few ever after children are one thing, but Rumpelstiltskin is another entirely. He may be behind these murders, and he's one of the most deranged and mysterious fairy tale creatures that ever came to Ferryport Landing. I can't put you into harm's way when I have no idea what to expect. This isn't about danger, Sabrina said, shaking with anger and hurt. We've been in plenty of dangerous situations since we moved to this town. This is about me, isn't it? Granny Rhoda turned in her seat and eyed the girl. In the past, I thought you two girls were smart enough to handle yourselves. I thought you might possibly be the cleverest girls in the history of the family. But right now, I don't trust your judgment, Sabrina. You're not who I thought you were, child. I'm sorry, but this case is closed for the Sisters Grimm. Everyone was furious with her, so Sabrina had crept upstairs to her room, rather than hear another lecture. As she lay in bed, looking up at the model airplanes her father had hung from the ceiling, she thought there might be an upside to being the black sheep of the family. While everyone was busy solving mysteries, she could spend more time searching for her parents. Just 2 days ago, she would have thought this was a perfect chance, but now, with Granny acting so blind to the truth about the town's residents, she worried the old woman would be the next victim. If that happened, the girls would get sent back to the orphanage, and any chance of finding their mom and dad would be gone. Daphne entered the room, dressed in her pajamas, and sat down on the edge of the bed. Well, we all know what Granny's like when she's mad, she said. She's downstairs cleaning the house. She's been dusting for the last hour. If you get her any madder, she's going to clean out the closets. I didn't mean to make her angry, Sabrina said. You've got to get over this thing you have about ever afters, Daphne said. Sabrina groaned. If Daphne was going to lecture her, she'd be happy to go back to receiving the silent treatment. No, what I've got to do is convince everyone to stop being so naive, Sabrina said. But let's just say I'm wrong about everything. Punishing us for my attitude isn't going to help solve the case. Granny can't do it all, and she's not going to get any help from Charming and the sheriff. We could be searching the tunnels. Who knows how far they've dug, or even what they're digging for? Maybe there's some kind of monster under the town. I know that sounds nuts, but we used to think the same thing about giants not so long ago. What if the bad guys are doing something really bad down there, while Granny is running around trying to find out which of the kids at school are monsters? So what do? We do what we're supposed to do, Sabrina said. We're grimmers, and something is wrong in this town. It's our job to find out what it is. Once she was confident her grandmother and Mr. Cairns were asleep, Sabrina shook her sister awake, and the two of them crawled out of bed. They crept out of their room and down the hall to Puck's bedroom. Don't step on the plate, Sabrina reminded her sister as she opened the door. Inside the boys' magical forest room, the sun had set, replaced by a sea of stars, each blinking brightly just for Puck. The boxing kangaroo was asleep in his ring, and the roller coaster had been turned off. All was still except for the cascading waterfall splashing into the lagoon. The girls crept along the path, around the lagoon, and into some heavy brush. Eventually, they came to a trampoline on which Puck was sound asleep. The trickster king was wearing a pair of baby blue footy pajamas that had little smiling stars and moons on them. Held close to his face was a soft pink stuffed unicorn with a rainbow sewn on its side. If only Sabrina had brought a camera, she could have also recorded his thumb in his mouth. Time to wake up the sleepy monkey, Sabrina cooed in baby talk, doing her best not to roll with laughter. Daphne giggled but held her hand over her mouth. Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey, Sabrina continued. Puck stirred in his sleep but didn't wake. A big stream of juice escaped his mouth and ran down the front of his pajamas. Does someone have the sleepies? Daphne said, mimicking her sister's baby talk. Time to go back in dreamland, precious, the older girl said, shaking the boy roughly. Puck sprang from his sheep with wings extended from his back. He waved his big pink unicorn like a deadly sword and slashed at his children. Nice jammies, Daphne snickered. I especially like Mr. Unicorn, Sabrina laughed. His name is Craven the Deceiver, Puck corrected before realizing what he was holding and who was with him. He tossed the stuffed animal aside and fluttered down to the ground. We've got a plan for tomorrow and you're going to help us, Sabrina said. Forget it, the boy answered. Tomorrow I'm telling the old lady to find another bodyguard for her stinky offspring. It's beneath me. But this plan requires a lot of mischief, Sabrina said. Puck's eyes lit up. I'm listening, he said. We're going to get into the boiler room tomorrow to search the tunnels. The old lady will be furious. I know, but I'm willing to take the heat if it saves someone's life. Fine, what's the plan? Sabrina reached into her pocket and took out her set of keys. Where'd you get those? Daphne asked. I've been swiping them off Granny's keyring one by one and making copies at the hardware store. Puck's eyes lit up and he looked at Sabrina as if he had never seen her before in his life. You stole those keys and made copies? She dropped her eyes. Yeah, she said, thinking she felt disapproval. That's wonderful, the boy said, eyeing the girl like a child watching a fireworks display. He was in complete awe of her. He grabbed both the girls by the wrist and dragged them through his room. Let's put them to use then. Once they were in Mirror's room, the three children stepped through the reflection and came out into the Hall of Wonders. Mirror was standing in front of his own full-length mirror, sucking in his plump belly and making muscle poses like a bodybuilder. Doesn't anyone in this house sleep anymore? He asked. We need some help, Sabrina said. That's the end of this video. I'll send more later.